Thank you everyone for joining us on this panel. And prior to this panel, we were having a discussion outside about what all is happening in the Web3 space. And I must tell you, there's so much that we don't really know about how it is empowering fans, how it is gonna empower creators, how bigger platforms like Shemaroo, Geo are tapping into this opportunity. Let me begin with the only lady on the panel. Not that there's any gender parity, but of course, we see what Web3 is doing. The conversation is there, and we read about it. It's a very fancy word at times people talk about. But if we look at the ground, at the level of a platform, how important has Web3 become in your conversations, in your real everyday conversations?
Audible enough? Okay. Before that, I'll just introduce myself. This is Nidhi Mittal, and I head the brand marketing for Saavn, one of the leading music streaming platforms in India. So, like he mentioned, what we were discussing outside, and I was just telling all the peers of mine in the industry that this is not an immediate boardroom conversation we are having, right? So this is not something that we are discussing every day, but that doesn't go by saying that this is not something we are keeping on our radar, right? As a platform at the moment, there are a lot of focus areas that we primarily work on. One is definitely the scalability. And these are, the areas that I'm going to talk about right now are the ones on which we have kind of built up a legacy over a period of time. So when you consume content on platforms like Jio Saavn or Spotify or any other similar platform, there is a kind of scalability they have developed over time. So when I say I have 100 million users, it's not an overnight phenomena that has happened for me, right? It has taken us years of effort to kind of have that platform innovation or kind of user experience that we have built up. So that's one area that we continue to focus on and grow. The second would be in terms of the content. Why would a user come back to us is primarily the question that we have all the time, because it's a very, very competitive industry that we're working on, and we are discussing about the decentralization of that content where everybody would hold a power. So at the moment, if I'm able to keep that content heavy platform, then is the only case when the users might come back to me, right? So that's one of the second areas of focus at the moment for us, that how could we keep the content as good as it can be possibly, right? And the third aspect, which is also very important for us, is around the brand safety. We're talking about decentralization here. We have sat down to kind of discuss around that. But if you look at it, eventually, one of the stronger monetization routes for us is also advertising. In fact, that is the business that I head at Jio Saavn. Now, when we are talking about advertising, brand safety again becomes a very, very primary topic for us. We cannot let the user experience go for a compromise in terms of what you see, let's say, as an ad on our platform. And that's not something we can sell to our advertisers as well. So I think, these are some of the larger issues at the moment on our table. As a platform, when we see, so we are somewhere, very similar to the people who are trying to come up or have already created the Web3 space. We are just another publisher, right? We are also still holding a very powerful platform, which we have built over time. Is it something that we would not like to adapt to? Definitely. But is it something we are ready to adapt right now? No. The answer probably would be no. So I think what we are looking at is, it's very fresh and very new for all of us here, but it's not something that we will not be able to adapt to or not willing to adapt to in the future.
I think, Web3 is new for all of us. I think it's, of course, new in itself as well. Let me come to you, Prashan. Fans, we are all fans of something or the other, right? Music, we have seen, or a personality, or a movie, we have fans. And what are fans? Fans have always been the followers. They have just been there. What do they get in return? Have you ever got anything in return as a fan? Anyone has really got something in return for following, say, any movie, any actor? Anyone? Yes or no? No? Okay, now you will get. That's what Prashan is doing. Prashan, how are you empowering fans with Web3? What does empowering fans mean? When they follow now, what will they get?
Sure. No, thank you. Let me also take a minute to introduce myself. I was the CEO of Ghana prior to this. Seldom you would see competitors sitting on the same panel, but Ghana is past me. So we have Nidhi from Saavn. So when I was building Ghana, and we built Ghana to almost 180 million users. A couple of things that we did was we empowered independent artists through an initiative called Ghana Original. And Ghana Original was, if you remember the song Tera Ghata, which pretty much became a very, very iconic song by Gajendra Verma. If you think about Lehenga, if you think about Lamborghini, these are songs that we produced as part of Ghana Original. The initiative was essentially to empower independent artists because in 2016-17, Bollywood music was 90% consumption on every platform. Bollywood was ruling the roost, and we said, okay, can we actually empower one industry? And of course, Punjabi had that flair of independent music as we see. And we basically supported that industry, built about 4 or 5 artists there, right from Gajendra Verma, Tony Kakkar's first song, Neha Kakkar's first song, then, Kaka is another artist that came from our stable, etc. And as part of the journey, what we saw from a creator standpoint, and I'll come to the fans, was that creators struggle on 3 fronts. One is funding, the second is discovery, third is distribution. उसके पास पैसा नहीं होता कंटेंट बनाने का और कोई उसको सपोर्ट करने को तैयार नहीं पैसा देके बिकॉज द लेबल इंडस्ट्री हैज बीन बिल्ट इन अ वे वेयर दे सपोर्ट द सुपरस्टार्स. सो जब एक सुपरस्टार बन गया जुबिन नौटियाल तो सारे गाने जुबिन नौटियाल के हैं. एक सुपरस्टार अरिजीत बन गया सारे गाने अरिजीत के हैं. तो बेचारा जो इंडिपेंडेंट आर्टिस्ट है उसको वॉइस नहीं मिलता. उसको वॉइस नहीं मिलता तो जो प्लेटफॉर्म्स है विच इज ऑफकोर्स गाना, स्पॉटिफाई, सावन एक्सेट्रा, उसको डिस्कवरी भी नहीं मिलती बिकॉज द प्लेटफॉर्म्स ऑल्सो लिसन टू द लेबल्स in some sense ki they have some wielding power, so discovery becomes a bit of a challenge. So if you are not discovered तो distribution नहीं होता, गाने hit नहीं होते, आप बड़े नहीं होते, आपके पैसे नहीं बनते, etc. That is a kind of cycle that we're trying to break. That is the concept that we have now taken to FanTiger, where essentially what we do is we help artists on fundraise. So independent artists come to us, they say that we'll basically want to raise some money, let's say 10 lakh rupees, जिस पे हम कंटेंट बनाएंगे. So we say, okay, we'll get your fans to actually back you. We help them raise that 10 lakh rupees. They produce that content. That content, is then published on all platforms, including, Spotify, YouTube, Saavn, Ghana, etc. And what the fans essentially get is 2-3 things. One is that they get for 50% of the royalty share. So if the song becomes a hit, 50% of the royalty share goes back to the fans. That is one. Second is कि आर्टिस्ट को भी 50% रेवेन्यू शेयर मिलता है. सो आर्टिस्ट ही हैज टू ओनली फोकस ऑन हिज क्रिएटिविटी. फंडिंग इज टेकन केयर ऑफ. अब उसको 50% अपसाइड मिलता है. अगर एक हिट गाना बनेगा तो 50% पैसा उसको मिलेगा. दैट इज द फर्स्ट स्टोरी ऑफ बेसिकली एम्पावरिंग द आर्टिस्ट एंड द फैंस to come together to create the new superstar, become a part of that journey. And then from there you start thinking कि fans को और क्या चाहिए. See, people in India look for value for money, and so we talk about NFTs, we talk about fancy words like that. I think until unless you have value for money kind of offering for a customer, it won't fly through. So उसको value for money चाहिए. उसने एक NFT खरीद ली एक गाने की. अब उस artist के 5 concert हुए तो उसको फ्री एंट्री है. उसको एक FanTiger पिट मिलता है जो बेसिकली बिल्कुल आर्टिस्ट के सबसे पहला द क्लोजेस्ट टू द आर्टिस्ट व्हेन ही इज परफॉर्मिंग, ही गेट्स अ फ्री एक्सेस टू दैट, ही गेट्स टू मीट द आर्टिस्ट एंड बेसिकली ही गेट्स these privileges for the next 4-5 years. So that's how you are essentially creating an ecosystem where the fans can come closer to the artist and support his journey. Now fan होते क्या है? fan कोई भी ऐसा आदमी who is willing to go beyond just being a follower कि like कर दिया और thank you. क्या आप पैसे लगा सकते हो अपने उस आर्टिस्ट पे? 100 रुपए लगाओ. If you don't have the money, 100 रुपए लगाओ. And basically this fan can be across any industry that you can think of. When you think of, Ramdev Baba, when you look at their followers who are willing to kind of go on his claim, back him, they are fans. So I think, restricting the definition of fans to an industry is not right. You have to basically create a cult following.
Right. I think this is a term that has come from the entertainment sector, but it needs to be rephrased to broad base it. But now why can they, do all this is because of Web3, right? That will empower them. If they become fans, it will be a mutual kind of a benefit, that's what they will get, right? That's what Web3 is doing in the entertainment sector.
I'll just add one more point there. I think Web3 is again a term between all of us. See, the users don't care about Web3, but what is he getting along with this is that think of it like stakeholders. कोई एक company बनती है let's say Instagram. So Instagram में the entire value is captured by the founders and the investors. While everyone is working towards the success of the platform. तो users है, चाहे वो creator है, उसने सबने मिलके वो platform बनाया. Now YouTube is valued at $200 billion today. Who benefits is only the founders and the investors who backed YouTube. But जो early user था, जिसने YouTube को पहले test किया था, etc. They are not benefiting from that. So that is the other thing कि creator और user को एक stake मिलता है company में, जो आगे चल के they can become part of that success story, much like an employee gets ESOP. A creator gets a CSOP, a user gets a USOP. उसको बोलते token है, but effectively, that's what we are solving for.
Right. I think also we need to simplify these terms for a common person to understand. We have made it very complicated. Rahul, so Rahul heads another popular content platform, Shemaroo. We are all familiar with, पहले moves में सबसे ऊपर आता था Shemaroo. So at the axis of Web3 and a platform that is known for for being there for so many years, how are you looking at Web3? Is Web3 a conversation in your system?
Yeah, I think thanks, Ruhail, and it's lovely to meet the fellow panelists today, and thank you everybody for being here. I think Web3 ka biggest contribution to me has been, it taught me two new terms, Web 2 and Web 1. I didn't know they existed before. I think that's really, really good. And then I added another third term, which is called Web 0. And that's what Shemaroo was 60 years ago, right? There was no internet. So I think these are all terminologies. The world changes. Internet is one of the biggest pillars in our world right now. The internet is bound to change as well. We've seen that in the so-called Web 1 phase to Web 2 phase, the change happened. And we are now at a cusp where we are actually moving to a new form of internet, and it's going to happen. Now, for an entertainment company, we can't be sitting on the fence and hoping that once the internet changes, we will come and bring out a new product offerings for the customers, and they will love us still. And that's exactly why the trigger to look at Web3 in a serious manner, creating a division in a 60-year-old company focusing on Web3 is what Shemaroo started off with. And so how I'm looking at it is essentially is Web3 is enabling newer business models, somewhat which Prashan mentioned, thanks to the power of blockchain. And on the other side, Web3 is also enabling a new form of internet, which is moving away from 2D to potentially 3D. Now, combining blockchain and immersive, what will entertainment mean is what we're trying to answer right now.
Right. Lot of tech stuff here, right? Kuldeep, you're also working on the fan side, right? Again, trying to disrupt that space. We heard what Prashan said before, how they are using Web3, what it would mean to fans. In that respect, what is your platform doing for fans? How is it different from what fans used to do earlier, engage with people? How is that going to change with what you're doing?
Great, thanks Ruhail. Hi everyone, I'm Kuldeep and I'm the co-founder of Infinity Sound. So my co-panelists have actually covered some very, very interesting basics, so we don't have to get into that. So thanks guys for bringing that up. See, when we talk about Web3 as a term, I don't know how many of you are aware of the aspect of the term semantic web. Actually, Web 2 के बाद semantic web आना था, but semantic web it's Web 3.
I'm looking at that.
But the beauty of Web 3, whether it is termed or not, the beauty is every user becomes a stakeholder in the economy of the internet. That is the fundamental, that's the one-liner, right? So, like all technology, internet also evolves. And the evolution is like, actually Prashan made that point, and rightly so. YouTube is such a large enterprise, it's valued at $200 billion, but the wealth is going to the owner of it and probably a few individuals, right? When compared to the number of users, it's a handful. But the users who are driving the engagement on YouTube on a daily basis, how many, we are on YouTube all day, all the time, right? We are streaming YouTube music, we are playing YouTube videos. So the stakeholder, we are also a stakeholder in the success, but Web3 kind of changes that definition, right? So in Infinity Sound, what we do is kind of very similar in terms to what FanTiger is doing. We create value for artists, right? And drawing from the previous panel discussion about tokenizing anything, I think this is very interesting for you also, because what we do is we help artists tokenize themselves or tokenize their album or tokenize their song. So I think you understood by now that anything can be tokenized, right? So we are the Web3 equivalent of tokenization. So we tokenize the artist, song, asset, anything that can be tokenized, and let users participate and have an ownership so that the performance of that product will drive revenues back to the user. And the reason why we focus on that is, let's say we have a product, a very interesting product. It might take X number of months to draw a certain number of users, but one very, very sure shot way of bringing and onboarding users is to show them that there's revenue and there's money to be made by being a part of the ecosystem, right? So that's where Infinity Sound comes in. So we allow users to create, we allow artists and creators to come onto the platform. We handle all the under the hood aspects of managing their platform, but they can create a mechanism where they can now go to their fans and say, hey, have a ownership in what I'm doing. You know, I'm just getting started. Imagine maybe if, a decade ago, if you had an opportunity to invest in someone like A.R. Rahman. You know, if A.R. Rahman as an artist has been tokenized and you have invested maybe a few thousand rupees, the value that you have created today of that will be huge. It's nothing different, you know. It's like crowdfunding is not new to everyone, so this is similar in those terms. But consider each artist or each creator as sort of like an enterprise, and then you're owning a small piece of the enterprise. Now, again, there are a lot of things we are deeper in there. We're talking about ownership and rights and all that, but smart contracts make it very easy to define what are the rights. So ownership can be to a certain extent saying that, hey, the ownership is only on the revenue made, or maybe some parts of decision making with regards to a few concerts or something. But the reason why I'm touching on this is because Nidhi made a point around ownership. So the ownership and what parts of ownership are also included can be decided in this space. So we kind of manage all of that through a platform.
A separate question on this. So essentially what you mean to say is that Web3 has made internet more participatory. You are no longer benefiting for creating an advanced technology. You are also benefiting the other side who are part of it, right?
Yes.
That's largely what the Web3 is going to do.
Yes.
And maybe in future when you're watching Insta videos, you might get paid for just watching it, right?
Yes.
You never know, right?
No, it is happening. Actually, that is happening.
I would love to watch it.
Yeah. So there is this, Chingari is India's largest social media platform. They have about 140 million users. They are already monetizing their users for watching videos through their Gari token. So it's happening.
So sure, let me come to it. Nidhi, another aspect of Web3 that will unravel is that there will be decentralized. The monopoly will go. Big platforms like yours, they won't have monopoly on things. The smaller platforms, independent artists will get empowered. Is that the threat for big platforms? How are big platforms preparing to address it? Because of course, they come with their own set of deep pockets and deep stakes. How are they looking at this possible disruption?
Sure. So I think it's not that these platforms are not pro artists, right? I mean, even on a platform like Saavn, we had this property which was spot on. We were trying to promote upcoming artists and have their music onboarded. But it's not a possibility that you can have every kind of a content and allow every artist to produce. I think that is something where even Web3 platforms will have to put up a restriction, right? What can go online and what cannot. That still remains the basics. So we have a subscription base as well. So we were discussing fandom just now, and we're just thinking, there's a very thin line between who's a subscriber and a fan, right? Subscriber is somebody who's coming to our platform for a elevated user experience, right? I don't want to see ads. I want to download the song. I want to have a no Wi-Fi zone and stuff. A fan is somebody who's coming back to consume that content, again and again. Like we were discussing in the panel room around the song that Prashan just mentioned about the Ghata song. It probably died down over time because that content by that artist was not produced again and again. So as a platform, we are very pro-centric towards artists and we push those boundaries. Now to kind of, we don't see that as a threat. I think the traditional changes might need to happen. There will be some kind of relationship ties we would have to break, let's say with labels, right? Allowing them and having the centralized power. It's not about just decentralization of the data. I think we're talking about the decentralization of where the power lies. Is it with the content creator? Is it somebody like a platform of ours where people can come and consume it? Or somebody who's allowing that content to be created and then published, right? So I don't see that as a threat. What I can foresee is there will be definite adaptation to the changes that will happen. For us, changing a subscriber to elevating the experience, which my panelists are mentioning in terms of tokenizing it or creating that zone with the fan. It's not something which is impossible for us to do. So I think we will go down that route to utilize the platform power that we already have, the content power that we are already sitting on, and elevate that experience, right? And build our own, fan base around it. Right. So if we were somebody who were in the same zone of killing artist talent, then it would have been a threat that, now where do we sit? But I think we're sitting on the same side of the panel today.
Right.
Just supporting different platforms.
Since we are on this question, let me go to Rahul because it's relevant for you as well. How are you preparing for that possible disruption? Is that even a threat? Do you perceive it as a threat, or are there responses in place to deal with it?
So Shemaroo's business model till it entered into broadcast and OTT revolved around ownership of large number of IPs. Like thousands and thousands of Bollywood films, regional films, devotional. And monetization of that was the revenue model, what Shemaroo was focusing on earlier. And if we follow the true Web3, then content should be with everybody, right? It's a democratized ecosystem where we don't necessarily own the content always. I honestly don't know how it will pan out in the long run, but in the medium to short term, I think what it's going to do is it's going to actually empower content creators like Shemaroo to create better content, because now the internet has become fully participatory. Earlier, so even right now, as we, in the Web 2 to Web 3 journey, a lot of what we watch, the data is being captured by the OTT or the digital platform, and they're able to actually create content which suits your liking based on your content viewing habits, right? But that's happening in a passive way. We as consumers are not speaking to them, right? But in the Web3 phenomena, consumers will have a voice in the content creator. The content's going to get even better and more engaging over a period of time. What happens in the next 10 to 15 years, I can't predict. But in the short term, we will see a lot better content and growth of content companies happening.
For predictions, we'll speak at the astrology conference. Prashan, Tera Gata you talked about, right? It had huge fans. He had huge fans. I mean, that Ghana. Still it sank. So how is the fan-artist dynamic actually helping the artist, the company? Give me a sense, because I fail to understand. He had fans, still he failed. So how is, what does empowering fans here mean? How does it translate for good for the artist?
No, see, that's a good example. So I think two things, one is content and one is artist. Sometimes it's easier to kind of align to content than to artist, because the artist, to be able to build a fan base, has to devote a lot of time and energy in terms of building and nurturing a fan base, which supports him through his life. Now, the way, this entire narrative has shaped up over the last 10 years, it's mostly been about content and less about artist. And so, as the artist, whose content, let's say 2 or 3 pieces, 5 pieces of content became successful, he got acquired by a label. And from there on, his journey became easier in terms of, producing more and better content with all the ecosystem around him and the label support that he got. He never had the time and energy to actually build a very, very viable fan base. And that's where I think the artists still, they do not devote the kind of time and energy needed to culture and nurture a fan base. They are now active on Instagram. They are now sharing a lot of content with their followers to be able to develop that connect. If you have been to a concert, जब आप concert पे if you connect with the artist, the kind of connection that you build, you cannot build that on a platform. That's a different level of connection that you build with the artist when you are actually on the concert. So I think the artists basically need to create their 360 journey in terms of making sure that the fan is part of that and inculcating that fan base when he is successful and when he is not successful. Because you all know the artists mostly have a life cycle of 3 years, 4 years at max. Most of the artists would go through that cycle, and a lot of artists don't even reach the pinnacle. The second bit I would say is when it comes to decentralization that we just talked about. Decentralization is a keyword. Now decentralization can be of ownership, it can be of power, it can be of algorithms, it can be of users. Decentralization is a very generic word. So just ownership could be with fans, but it could also be with Shemaroo. So 50% of ownership can be with Shemaroo, 50% is with the fans. So the fans are deeply invested in making that content successful, while Shemaroo gets the benefit and they have the backing, and they also become like the, you need one big supporter. कि यार मैं 50 रुपए लगाता हूँ, तुम 2 रुपए लगा दो, correct? If 100 people putting 1 rupee is very different from actually having one supporter who puts the 30 rupees. So you need to have those supporters. So essentially decentralization would mean the ownership becomes segregated, while there could still be one big supporter, but he would not be 100%, he would be less than 50%. So that is the way to think about it from an algorithm standpoint. जो algorithm बनते हैं, अब वो CEO decision ले रहा है कि बॉस ये algorithm ऐसे बनेगी. Versus let's say you have a community where fans also say that okay, let's put these artists, let's support them. Let's not give 90% of the views to top 10 artists. Let's give only 60%. इस type के feedback आप community से लोगे और आप अपने product को better बनाओगे so that you create more discovery. Of course, you cannot solve for discovery of 1 million artists. But today, if the discovery is happening of 10 artists, you will increase that to 500. So इस तरह से I think the narrative, and I am a believer that you have to take the middle path. You cannot be fully decentralized and also you cannot be fully centralized.
Right. Of course, I think it's gonna become more participatory again on this side as well, where everybody's voice would be heard and insights would be implemented. Kuldeep, when it comes to fans and trying to convince them that, look, this is what Web3, tokenization, NFTs are gonna do to you, how open are they to such possibilities? Do you have to do a real convincing to get them there, or are they really at the cusp of looking to adopt these offerings from your side?
Wow. That's a great question, thanks. So whenever there is an evolution of product, you're always met with this line that you have to cross, where you need to build trust both ways, right? And at the same time, you're dealing with so much from all the angles. Like, for example, we're talking about immersive experiences, right? So to convey all of this to the fans and saying that you're going to get something out of it is a big challenge, because it's very tough for the fans also to absorb as much, because they're not used to this kind of journeys, right? So the way it has to go, it has to kind of trickle into the audiences to make them understand the fundamental basis, being that, hey, I'm a participant in this. I'm an ecosystem stakeholder, which means, so if I'm backing something, let's say I have some sort of equity, whether it is money, whether it is interest, whatever, I will definitely promote it in some way or the other. So the first step is to identify the group of people who are probably in this space, like the Web3, active Web3 users who understand this space, and saying, you will be the first adopters of something like this. Because if you look at the parallel of this, will be equivalent to the Brave browser for Web3, will be akin to that on the entertainment aspect. By saying that when you're using this platform and you're on the platform, now you will get early access to identify good artists. You will get early access to invest in their work. You will also get early access to immersive experiences on the metaverse and stuff. What we have seen is over the past few months in our internal marketing campaigns and stuff, it was quite easy for us to do it, because when we are talking about micro investments. So when we're talking about investments, we're not talking about even thousands of rupees. We're talking about tens of rupees. So it's the kind of balance factor is very low. So it's kind of, at this point, it's not tough for us to bring them on board. However, it's much easier for us if the users are also Web3 savvy and they understand this. Because in the next 12 months, we are going to see a completely different entertainment landscape. And what everyone should understand is that until now, entertainment in this industry has been a sort of one-dimensional, right? I'm producing this music, please consume it, and you let me know your comments, right? That's one-sided. But what is about to happen is going to get n-dimensional. So the revenue sources are going to increase, and you're going to have ancillary revenue sources. You're not going to have primary revenue sources. So advertising is going to be a part of it. Maybe you'll have creators actively doing activations with maybe something like a superhero. So a lot of new avenues come there, so opportunities come in. So on the front, it's quite easy.
So you cannot take your fans for granted now on, right? I mean,
No way.
that
Those
era
days
is
are
coming
gone.
to an end, right? Great. So I would invite some questions, and the best part is, if you have questions, you will get NFTs. I don't know when. Please, yeah.
From our side, you will get subscription, no NFTs.
Please take a microphone.
Okay, my question is to Prashan.
So your
Prashan.
name and what do you...
Sure, yeah. My name is Rahul. I'm the founder of a company called Metaverse 911. So we work with a lot of initiatives inside the Metaverse domain. So with respect to the artists onboarding on a platform like FanTiger, I've been following FanTiger since the time you formed the first website. And I've seen it, how it changed over a period of time. So artist onboarding is a very big challenge because artist doesn't have the money. So artist goes to a production house. And now the production house says, okay, mere ko itne ka de do, and now further whatever I make, ye fix ho gaya. Okay? Whichever way. The second part is, which artist says, no, I will go and work with FanTiger or any other platform per se individually, because you are more of an aggregator. So essentially from artist perspective. So how do you handle that situation where artist doesn't have the money to produce the content and he doesn't have the time also and the liberty also to trespass the production house or the distribution houses? How do you presently handle the situation?
See, the labels can only cater to a handful of artists. That is the truth, and that will remain the truth because that's how their DNA is, and that's how they have traditionally made their business successful. And so you will find n number of artists who are looking for opportunities. I think the biggest responsibility on your shoulder, if you're trying to do that, is to make sure that you give good feedback to the artists. And if you find a good artist, you support them. And that's what we do at FanTiger in terms of helping him raise money and kind of helping him produce the song, helping him release that song on all these platforms. So I would say that there is no such restriction unless you are talking to some artist who's already signed up with the label. In that case, of course, he's not at liberty to produce something for you. But if you have the smarts and if you have the negotiation skills, anything is possible. That's the other thing I'll say.
Last question, the follow-up question. Artist finds you or you have to go find the artists?
Both
This
ways.
domain. Which
Both
one
ways.
is harder?
See, actually, with my experience, because I had done 250 songs as part of Ghana Original, so artists mostly find us.
Okay.
But that would not be the case with everyone.
So we have 6 minutes. There's a
Great.
question there at the back. Sir, can you please, उनको
Thank
mic
you.
दे दो
Thank you,
वहाँ पे,
Prashan.
corner पे. वो right on your yes. Please introduce yourself, sir.
Yeah, sure. Hi, my name is Shantanu Sharma, and I've been in this space for 8 years now. And it's probably a comment from which I can probably invite something out of what you guys are talking about. Really appreciate what you guys have been doing in this space, in your own spaces as such. But when you talk about Web3, a couple of comments which probably Nidhi made and Prashan made was that when you are into Web3, you have to, the Web3 guys also may have to limit or restrict what kind of, artist comes in and all. what I really understand about Web3, I may be wrong, I may be happy to be corrected, is that apart from decentralization or tokenization and the other things, there are two important things in any Web3 aspect. One is it is censorship resistant, and secondly, it is also there's no entry barrier, which means that anyone can come, create content, and anyone can come appreciate or not appreciate the content. So I think if you put in that kind of restrictions, it's not Web3 anymore. All right? But yeah, there are multiple ways in which you can do that. So I would love to have a comment. It does, apart from you being more profit-making or profit-centric organizations, a decentralized autonomous organization which works in this sphere, okay, can also create some amount of value for everyone in the stakeholder. So do you think this kind of a thing could work in the entertainment space sphere?
Anyone?
So, I think you rightly said, I think when you look at Web3 and you look at fundamental pillars of Web3, and you say that, censorship resistance is one pillar, decentralization is the other pillar, no entry barrier is the third pillar, and there could be multiple other such pillars. I think we have to understand that Web3 will be successful only with adoption of users. And users don't care about Web2 or Web3. There might be a portion of users who are staunch believers in censorship resistance as one of the key pillars of going to a platform. And so you build towards, that kind of audience. We are trying to build a platform which is welcoming for everyone in the country. And so as, Nidhi said, brand safety is one thing that you have to build towards, because tomorrow you have to build a sustainable business. If you're getting users, you have to make some money, to sustain that, the flywheel that you're trying to build. And if you make it completely censorship, free, and you have all kinds of content on that platform, maybe you're not building for the mass audience. That is, that would be the first thing. So I think the way to look at this would be entry barrier. Of course, you allow everyone, but everyone cannot be discovered. Think of, a platform which is 100 million users and 1 lakh artists. Every artist is available, but can every artist get streams? No. But today, only 15 artists get the stream. Tomorrow, maybe 5,000 artists will get the stream. So you have decentralized. You cannot decentralize 100%. You are decentralized.
Right. Sorry,
in a way.
I will wear my moderator's hat. You want to make a...
Yeah, I just want to quickly add, I think it's very important to understand the evolution of this space, especially in the context of Web3. We cannot look at it completely as a Web3 kind of business, because entertainment business has a legacy of, a few decades where it has established principles. So it has to kind of evolve from fundamentals that are existing today in the business with the brands as well as artists, which kind of take them into Web3. It cannot kind of make a jump in that sense, right? But given that aspect, the best way is kind of work backwards and integrate with the larger brands so that they can bring the knowledge into this space. And once it has kind of evolved and matured, then it will have its own moderation tools. It will have its own people who will again be incentivized to moderate the platform and etc.
Right. Sorry, last comments from you.
Yeah, just to take a cue from this, we have been just looking this from the lens of music, right? So I think entry barrier, it's an open platform. There are many open platforms. For example, our platform as well. If you look the podcast space, today everybody can produce a podcast and upload it on our platform or Spotify, right? What we are not seeing from the larger side, and I think that will be the future for us, is the consumer behavior. More than what we decide on our boardrooms, it's more important to see how you guys react to it. And me as a consumer will react to it. I'm still not, consuming from, let's say, a Web3 platform. I'm still going to the typical platforms. Now, at the moment, we have a very good control around that consumer behavior. Today, I know who's listening to what, sitting in Bihar, and at what time, what mood he's in, and all. Now, taking that cue is the adaptation I'll make to my platform in the future in terms of creating that Web3 experience for them. So I think, entry barrier doesn't exist in that way. But what Prashant was saying, that, everybody can produce a content, put it up, but are they all successful? That's the question. Right. So if you look at the podcast space, that's exactly how it is happening. Not everybody is successful enough.
Rahul, 1 minute, 30 seconds. Yeah. Final comment, what will Web3 really, look like? Are we also doing enough when it comes to what the global counterparts are doing in terms of platforms, global platforms?
Yeah, I think, so my closing thoughts is that, we as a people in the room who are actually looking at the new technology should simplify it as much as possible. Let the consumers, I don't know how many of you know here that TikTok is on a JavaScript. Nobody cares, right? TikTok works. So similarly, Web3 में बहुत components technology हैं, but consumers don't really care about it. Let's make it simple. Let's start to give a flavor of this to consumers. A lot of us are building things for 7 years, 8 years ahead in the pipeline, but let's do something immediately. Let's put the adoption, and I'm sure the industry will adopt and move very quickly towards it along with the consumers.
Wonderful. I think on that note, I will intervene and thank you all for sharing your thoughts. I really enjoyed talking to you. I'm sure the audience did, but thank you for your time.